Hello, welcome or welcome back to Women Think Bigger. Today we're going to talk about fears and what we can really learn from our fears because I think most of us spend our lives in an energy of trying to detach from them, trying to overcome them. And somehow, even though consciously we know that it has information behind that we can look at, we see fear as very negative most of the time instead of something positive that can help us grow. And I think this is really important because I was recently reflecting on how much peace it has brought to my life to switch the energy and the relationship that I had with fear, and something that I'm not trying to tone down anymore and I'm not trying to avoid, but I could just consciously look at it, and it's really helping me to grow. And I think this new approach can be really beneficial for you in your journey. So if you've been caught up in this energy of not really knowing what to do with the essence of fear on a deeper level, I want to really look at it from a different angles today to really help you also change your relationship with fear on the long term. And we know that fear is something that usually is helping us feel safe, but I really want to go beyond what we commonly hear about fear, and I really want to give you a new angle to look at it today. So the first interesting way to look at fear is I want you to look at it as an energetic reference of time and space. So why is that and why is it helpful? When you try to look at fear as something that you can identify in time and space, this is going to help you distinguish yourself from the fear, but it's also going to help you identify whether this is something that is coming from the past or this is something that you're experiencing in the present moment. Because usually fear is tied to a certain identity or a certain person that we've been mostly in the past. So when I talk about an energetic reference of time and space, if you currently have a fear, you might be able, if you bring awareness to it, to think of, does it belong to the person that you're currently right now? Or does this fear belongs to the past and can be referenced in the past? As you may know, a lot of our thoughts are just coming up in autopilot mode every day. We have a lot of thoughts that are repeating themselves every day. So the first thing we want to do is to bring awareness to those thoughts and try to identify whether this fear is actually related to your current identity or if it's something that is actually coming from the past but it's manifesting in the form of present thoughts. So you can think of it as a marker to distinguish your old identity versus your new identity. And what this does to your brain, to your nervous system, is that automatically when you see that a certain thought or fear is coming from the past, you immediately emotionally are more distant to it and you're more regulated because you're able to sort of detach from this fear and bring awareness to the fact that it's something that belongs to the past. And obviously, it automatically gives you your power back because you're able to detach from it right away. So, by simply recognizing or saying, okay, this belongs to an old timeline, it has automatically less power over you and it has less emotional intensity. And this is something really important because the fears evolve as we evolve. But what happens often is that we're not necessarily aware of the distinction between our past emotional baggage and the present moment. So whenever something comes up, we experience it with the same emotional intensity. Versus if we try to locate it as a reference of time and space of something that happened, or we can tie it to an old identity, we're much more able to detach emotionally and to understand that this is really coming from an old timeline and that we are in a new one. The second thing I want to talk about is the fact that fear has its own specific pattern that is going to manifest as a form of thought. So it can look very obvious, but we often don't put conscious awareness to that because fear is not just an emotion, it's also a series of thoughts. And what I've observed is that it's usually the same thoughts coming at the same time, but manifesting in different ways in your body. And sometimes when those thoughts show up, we're not immediately aware that it's tied to a specific fear. So usually your brain is picking up on the initial chain of thoughts, but it's not necessarily consciously making the link to a specific fear. So a great exercise that we need to do is whenever we see that certain repeating thoughts come up, we need to map them to a certain fear that we might have so that the next time these thoughts arrive, our brain is immediately going to signal and recognize that this is a fear that is gonna probably manifest in the form of other thoughts that are the same and coming at the same time, because this is the moment that you're able to also emotionally regulate when you're consciously aware that it's a manifestation of your fear. Otherwise, you just have those random thoughts. You're not necessarily aware that it's tied to a fear, and it's hard for your nervous system to regulate because it's already in this emotional intensity. And this is the moment when you're conscious of those thoughts where your brain, as I was saying previously, can really see if this is tied to a present timeline or a past identity or a version of you that is just being on autopilot mode. And this is a very simple but powerful way of letting go of certain things, because the moment we recognize that it's coming from the past, the next time you have a thought that it's coming, you already know that it's tied to a fear, that it's tied to the past, and it's going to be easier for your emotional body and your nervous system to release it. And obviously, doing this exercise or journaling on your thoughts are going to help you identify when you have new ones that are currently linked to the new circumstances in your life. And the third thing I want to talk about is that your biggest fear are actually your roadmap to your potential. And what can be really triggering is that we spend most of our lives in society trying to avoid or not feeling that much fear, that we really forget that it's the greatest catalyst for our growth. And it doesn't mean that those fear-based emotions are going to get any comfortable by just look at them in a different way. But what it means is that you can give them a different meaning for your life. So, for example, my biggest fears personally are very linked to my life purpose and who I came here to be. So, when you look at your fears as a roadmap to your potential, something inside of you is going to switch. You're going to look at them in a very different light because it will activate something within you. And no matter if obviously it's not comfortable or we try to overcome it or it takes time, it's going to be a roadmap to your potential. And then you're going to start remembering that your fears are actually the key to your dreams. Because the biggest fear are just, think of it as a reflection of what's on the other side of your potential. It's almost like the fear is the shadow side. And once you identify that there's a shadow, you know that there's an opposite of light, and that light is really the potential or who you really can become and what you can really achieve in life. And when you take time to sit with these concepts, you're going to experience less resistance because suddenly the fears become more something that is guiding you like a North Star, and there is less and less resistance to trying to avoid them. It doesn't mean it gets comfortable, but it just means that it's becoming a reflection of your potential. And so your relationship to it becomes way more positive and way less negative and heavy as we've often been told in society. So to be clear, when you look at your fears as your roadmap to your potential, it doesn't get any more comfortable. But this is where the life-changing transformation is, because you are going to experience things in a new way. For example, I'm much more kinder to myself when I'm navigating challenging moments, when I'm navigating my fears, because I know that somehow they're my North Star. There's something that is signaling that I'm on my way to my life purpose as well. I see them as an expansion of my potential, and I don't put as much pressure on myself to make them disappear. I just know that it's really part of the process of becoming the best version of me. So I switched from seeing them as a limitation and something that was make me feel stuck. I look at them as a sign of really potential and progress. So let me know how this is resonating, how you've been experiencing fear in your life so far. Is it something that you have a hard time dealing with? Is it something that has been very negative for you or something that you were trying to avoid at any cost? Let me know in the comments. In any case, I really hope that it reminded you that this is a catalyst for your growth and for your transformation. And if you want more content on those topics, I recently released a program that is called Rise, that is mainly dedicated for entrepreneurs who want to reconnect with their dream project It's a unique series of 30 emails with very powerful mindset shifts and journaling exercise. So if you feel called to do things differently in your business in a more aligned and powerful way, the link is in the description below. It's a program that is really easy to follow, it's very powerful, and it's also very affordable. So if it calls to you, just check the link in the description. It's called Rise. And as always, thank you for being here, and I hope to see you in another episode of Women Think Bigger very soon.